My husband's question for my kids was always, how did you make the world a better place today? And so they sort of knew to expect that. I think they got a little, Dad, I'm 4. What? But the answer could very easily be something like, I brought my friend a cookie, or frequently it became, I picked up trash on the playground. There's a lot of trash being picked up for a while.
Austin Community Capital. This show is a celebration of the spirit of Austin, Texas, honoring our past, engaging our present, and building our future together.
Piper, I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today. We connected because I'm always interested in organizations giving back and serving our local community.
Yep.
And you're in a very overarching one that was interesting. We'll dig into that today. But the way I would introduce you is you and your character have really been informed by a close, tight-knit family where there was powerful culture in your family of origin. And then you've really replicated that in the family you built now. So excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. That is a really lovely way to introduce me. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. I think that's absolutely true. And I think that my hope is that we are taking the community that we have built and teaching our kids how to go on and build community themselves. So thank you for that.
Amen to that. Well, let's hear about the origin of that. Tell us about your family growing up, your parents. What were they like?
My mom is a therapist. She's 79 and she's still seeing like 15 to 20 clients a week.
Wow.
My dad is a teacher. And so we actually grew up on a boarding school campus. Talk about community. He ran the boarding program at St. Stephen's. And so we lived in a house on campus. And so I went to meals at the dining hall with the other boarding students. I went to school with day students. And so it meant that not only were we part of a bigger St. Stephen's sort of school community, so, you know, all my friends were day students and all my boyfriends were boarding students, and I had sort of this wide array, but also I think what it meant was because we were surrounded by that type of community all the time, our family was really closely knit. And so we are a family that loves each other very much. We spend a lot of time together even still. And I think that I valued that in such a way that's one of the reasons that we replicate that with our kids now. My parents, because they were both sort of give back people, I think ingrained in us that part of what we do as people is we try and make the world a better place as well. And so I went into the nonprofit sphere and the political sphere for a while, trying to get people to do good in the world, be good in the world. And my sister is a nurse practitioner. She's a pediatric nurse practitioner. So she's working with kids with pretty serious illnesses. And so growing up, we always knew that giving back was who we were sort of supposed to be. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so that means that from very early on, we were giving back to our community as well.
That's incredible. And so powerful to see that modeled by parents and be kind of invited into that by parents. Can you remember some early experiences of that, or like what form did that take?
It came in the form of some, the volunteering piece was, I can remember my sister doing like walkathons for the children's shelter. And my mom was baking cakes for kids in the children's shelter. And my volunteerism came in with my dad. We would always go to a nearby church that on Tuesday mornings, very early for this teenage girl, very early, we're serving people facing homelessness. And so we went and we served breakfast, or we talked with people while they got medical care or new clothes or whatever it is in a big church nearby. So that was one of my first introductions to volunteerism, in addition to the fact that every year my sister and I went with our church youth group to do mission projects in the Valley. And we had this amazing pastor. His name was Mark Porterfield, and Mark Porterfield really liked building stuff. And so he would take us down to the Valley and we would work on someone's house for 4 days, and then we'd go to the beach for a day, and then we'd come home. And I'm not the worst roofer, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay. Practical skills were instilled.
It's true.
I love it. And also you mentioned just being a tight-knit family. I think serving together is probably a powerful contributor to that. Any other rhythms that maybe advice to young parents, like how did that tight connection form?
I mean, I think we had a lot of traditions, which are traditions that I try and have with my family too. So on Easter, there was, you woke up and there was a basket, and then you went to church, and then you had this meal, and then you saw these people. On Christmas, the night before, you got one present and you got pajamas, and the next morning you woke up and you had this breakfast and you opened presents, you had this meal. And we still do that this year. I mean, right now with our kids. And so this year, my sister came to stay with me. So in our house, we had 4 adults and 5 kids. My parents came over, and from, 7 a.m. when the 10-year-old woke up until 10 o'clock at night, we did all the things that we do every single year. I think those traditions are so important. People wore the Christmas pajamas that they had gotten the night before. My mom still hides my sister and I's Christmas pajamas. This year was a little weak, Susie. I need you to know that. But
Susie, if you're listening,
come on, Susie. But she still hides our Christmas pajamas. And so I think those sorts of traditions, knowing what to expect, dinner together, right? Like my little family of 4 eats dinner together every night. There are maybe a couple nights where my daughter might be out with friends, but for the most part, we eat dinner together every night. That's really important. And so I know that that's hard these days, but those sorts of traditions, that reliance on each other, the conversation about, lots of people have conversations at the dinner table about what was your rose or your thorn today? Or my husband's question for my kids was always, how did you make the world a better place today? And so they sort of knew to expect that. I think they got a little, Dad, I'm 4. What do you think? But the answer could very easily be something like, I brought my friend a cookie, or frequently it became, I picked up trash on the playground. There's a lot of trash being picked up for a while. But I think that sort of conversation, expecting that conversation, knowing that this is part of your routine, is really important. I'll say one other thing because now I'm on a roll and I apologize. But I read something the other day about kids and Fridays, and about how on Fridays, if kids have a regular tradition or a regular set things that they do with their families on Friday evenings, they are more likely to be mentally healthy and not be stressed out and really be sort of healthier. And I see that and I feel that every Friday afternoon. My mom, since my daughter's 15, and so for the last 15 years, every Friday afternoon, she picks my kids up from school and they have an adventure together. They go to Batch and get a kolache, or they go to the state graveyard and look at famous people's graves, or whatever it is.
Good.
But they do something together on Friday afternoon, and then we all come together for dinner. But that tradition, I think, reminds them that they are part of our family community, but then they also have this bigger family community. And I think that's just invaluable.
Oh, man, that's so rich. And just to be able to do that intergenerationally as well. Like,
Great.
I'm watching my sister and her husband and their boys grow up in the same town as my parents, and just they do a Sunday night dinner, and they'll come over with the kids late afternoon, play in the yard, and just seeing the richness of that tradition compounding over time is really powerful. And this past holiday, I was seeing just the relationship that my nephews had with my dad. I'm like, I was never connected to my grandparents like that, because we would see him, once or twice a year, but so powerful to have just those consistent traditions.
And that grandparent love is always just a different type of love. It's just it doesn't matter what you do, what you say, who you are. It is solid love. And so I think that whether you get to see them once a year or every week, that grandparent love is really awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know just from hearing about your parents that they're big-hearted people. What else would you call out about their character that you got to see growing up and it was modeled for you?
They both never put a huge emphasis on things. Frequently, our gifts were travel. Now, I went through a very brawdy phase where my gifts needed to be very specific, and probably too expensive. But for the most part, our gifts were not big things. We never got new cars or do things like that. It was travel. It was going to really interesting places and experiencing things together. And I think that their focus and their value of education and of showing us the world really has had a big impact on who my sister and I are. My sister is really, 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 really smart and very well educated. I'm also well educated, but I'm just not as smart as she is. But we both really benefited from the fact that they said we're a therapist and a teacher. They both came from perfectly comfortable backgrounds. But for them, making lots of money was never the thing. My dad loved being a teacher because he was with us every summer. My mom, for a while, was a teacher specifically so that we could all be together in the summers. And I think that those values of family were really key. And the values of education and travel are also things that we have now taken and are passing on to our kids as well. Our kids for Christmas this year got a trip to New York. They've never been to New York. I didn't get them things. We're going to go see something, experience something new. So
I love that. And I love the comparison kind of gift-wise, like things versus, in your words, experiences, but also togetherness, which is such a cool, just powerful combo. And to be able to use those tools to develop children, expose them to new and beautiful things and open their eyes, broaden their horizons. That's so cool.
Yeah. So I think that overall my parents were very salt of the earth people who, we were always there. We were always their priority. So
that's awesome. So parents clearly were very powerful influences in your life. Anyone else during the formative years that really, and maybe that pastor who you saw was passionate builder in these different places where you were laying a roof, any other people that really shaped who you are? And
the pastor was pretty wonderful. He led our youth group. And so from the time that I was in sixth grade to the time that I went to college, he was a weekly guiding force. And he was funny and mildly irreverent and really lived the goal of giving back. And so and he married us because he and my mother-in-law's best friend, who's a judge, married us. They both did it together. But yeah, he was really important to me. I think the other thing that was really important to me was I had a bunch of older girls that were babysitters or were my dad's advisees at St. Stephen's. But these were girls that were really living who they wanted to be. And so I think that I grew up at a time where women were being told that they could do whatever. In fact, that they could do it all. And so watching these really cool women go off and become a film producer or go to some college that I had never heard of, but that was really cool, or, decide that they needed to be dating women, whatever it was, watching these older girls really chart their own path meant a great deal to me.
And what a unique experience that so few young people have, to have like all these case studies of kids, young people, kind of a season or two, a chapter or two ahead of you, to see, oh, they're doing that. Oh, they're doing this. Like how informative that must have been. And so what were you thinking as maybe, a 13-year-old, like how are you envisioning your path? You got these interesting data points and older people in your life. What were you thinking at that time? And
what's interesting? I was trying to think about this the other day. I can't remember. I know that when I was this is weird, but when I was a sophomore in high school, I think I wanted to be a backup singer. Please don't ask me why. I have no idea why I wanted to be a backup singer. Not a lead singer, but a backup singer. I don't know. I think the rest of the time, I think probably I wanted to be a teacher at some point. I think the thing that's always been clear, and I was mocked in high school for very much being a feminist. I was called names for being very feminist and making sure that the people around me knew what I believed about the equality of women and men. But from very early days, I knew I wanted to be a mom. I wasn't sure what else I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to be a mom. And that was sort of the only true sense I think I had of what I wanted to do, probably until the end of my high school. And at the end of my high school, Ann Richards was elected to governor of the state of Texas. And my mom took my sister and I to Congress Avenue to watch the inauguration of Governor Ann Richards. And she was the first woman elected governor in her own right. There had been a Mal Ferguson had been elected after her husband was kicked out of office. But Ann Richards was a really powerful, brilliant woman whose goal was to take care of people. And she was funny, super irreverent, did all sorts of things that a female governor you wouldn't expect, right? But as I was down there watching the inauguration on Congress Avenue with my mom and my little sister, Governor Ann Richards had this huge, tall, white hair. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of her. And so I'm standing here surrounded by all of these women, people of all types, but a lot of women, and they were all so excited because here was a woman becoming governor. And I realized that was one of the first moments that I realized that I needed to work to get other women in positions of power, to support other women. And so that sort of took me on a career to raise up women in a variety of different ways, through education or through politics or through health. Yeah.
I love that inciting moment, kind of an inspirational moment of seeing an exemplary female leader and feeling a call to charge yourself, or seeing an opportunity.
Okay, the stonemason sent a PDF. The plumber wants a check. Wait, who is Dave on Venmo? Is that the woodworker or the tool rental? Oh my gosh. Stop playing forensic accountant with your own renovation. With Loyal, you get one consolidated invoice. We manage the vendors and the paperwork. One bill, zero confusion. Loyal Home Concierge.
What did you do with that initially? Like, what were kind of the first steps of pursuing that conviction?
Well, one of the first things was just I leaned even more into my feminism. I was like, look at her. She's doing this. I'm not going to back away from being a feminist. And then when I got to college, I minored in women's studies. And then I did a study abroad that was focused on women. And then I did a Fulbright grant. And so my senior year of college, I wrote a proposal and went to Ecuador and studied women who were working on rose plantations and how the work of working on rose plantations had impacted both them and their communities.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to walk back a little bit before that Fulbright opportunity. How were you? So you were going to college, you had this conviction. How did that kind of get molded in college, or refined or changed? And was it shaped by communities you were a part of or other influential people in your life?
It was certainly shaped by classes that I took. I remember taking a feminist German literature class. I mean, how niche is that, right? But it was incredible. I still remember intricately the stories that we read and sort of what I walked away with. So I think there was a lot of concretizing that happened during that time. I also remember being surrounded. I went to a liberal arts college in the Midwest, and I remember being surrounded by people who were really smart in really sort of down-to-earth ways. And one of my best friends lived on my hall, and he had come from a pretty big high school, and he had a bunch of posters of half-naked women on his walls. And I remember many, many late-night conversations with Chad about the fact that he had half-naked Elle Macpherson on his wall and what that meant and why that was problematic and what it was telling me as a woman and what it would be telling his girlfriends and what it would be telling his daughters. We still joke about that because he's still one of my best friends 30 years later.
I love that.
But I think it was both the encouragement of that college and that place, and it was my own self-recognition. This is what felt right. Like when I was picking a major, I don't know how you did this. And I'm curious to hear about your path too. And at some point I would ask you questions. You'd be like, no. But when I was picking a major, you had that card, right? All I could do was go along and cross off the things that I didn't want to do.
Huh.
I had I did not have like I'm going to do blank. And so I was left with Spanish and women's studies. So I became a Spanish major and a women's studies minor. That's how I did that. There was nothing that felt right except those things. And so that's where I ended up. What was your major?
Mechanical engineering, art minor.
Oh, that's good. I'm jealous. Did you know you wanted to do that when you went to school?
Yeah, I knew before. I was going off of, okay, where are my strengths? What do I enjoy? So I was the kid always tinkering with like my go-kart engine, figuring out how things work, taking apart alarm clocks, tinkering a lot. So that was a natural expression.
And the art?
Always had a creative side. And through elementary school and high school, just always enjoyed art classes. And I thought this would be a beautiful balance to like heavy math and physics and, science based, and just let my creativity really develop. And it was true. Like I would have hours and hours of engineering coursework, and then I would go paint for 3 hours, and just totally cathartic.
And the types of people that you were interacting with were also probably very different. And you've got different
I haven't thought about that.
From each group of people, right?
Yeah.
Like, that sounds awesome. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, so Chad is a friendship that has stood the test of time. What were some other friendships in college, and what did your kind of people look like?
So both in high school and in college, I formed a nest. And I don't know that I formed it, but in high school, there were 6 of us. There were 3 boys and 3 girls. And we were friends with other people, but like that was my core group of people. And I relied on them, and we did everything together. And I still keep up with most of those people. In college, there were 7 of us. There were 4 girls and 3 boys. Man, those are my people. I mean, my husband is definitely my person, and I've met wonderful friends along the way, but those are my people. And I think for good and for bad, one of the things that we did was we all did different things. We all studied different things. Each one of us had a different major. We all studied abroad at different times and in different places. We played different sports. We were interested in different things, and we all had different friends. But we also were really careful, kind of like my family, to maintain that nest. So whether we were having a dinner and we only invited ourselves, or whether we were going off somewhere, I mean, we were pretty intentional about preserving that group. And for good or for bad, those are still my people. I see them once a year, and they live all over the country. So.
That's powerful. I feel like the norm, at least in the U.S., is friends kind of go with the season of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be great in some regards. You meet people and you connect because you're having kids at the same time, or going through, this particular season at the same time. But to have friends that stick around through the test of time is powerful. How does one build the nest initially? Like, what's the kind of formula for initially forging these tight groups of friends?
So everybody lived in the same dorm except for freshman year, with the exception of one person. And like your freshman year dorm is pretty formative. It's pretty. So once you meet these people and you're like, oh, that's a person that I want to be with. I think, during college, it wasn't always pretty. A lot of people, we dated each other, but since college, it's that very intentional. There's a text chain, and right now we're texting about Venezuela, but there's a text chain that is always going. During pandemic, because we couldn't get together, we were Zooming. But the intentionality of seeing each other once a year, every single year. And for a long time, we tried to do girlfriends and boyfriends, and we tried to do spouses, and we tried to do kids, and what we learned is that they have to put up with a lot of bad jokes. And so now the 7 of us just get together and eat and drink a lot and tell stories that we've all heard 100 times. And it goes back to feeling so comfortable and loved with that group of people that everyone wants to do it. Everyone wants to come together. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you were practicing that intentionality. Let's take the group in college at that time, saying, all right, dinner tonight, just us. Like, that's rare at a time of life where you're kind of wanting to spread your wings and more the merrier. Let's meet these people. Let's go do this thing. Like, was there one person in the group that was kind of helping preserve that or cast the vision, or was it kind of you were all united in that desire?
I think that my friend Tasha and I were probably the key. We're both very strong on friends, family, love, loyalty, like all those sorts of things. So when she and I would say, here's what we're going to do, here's who's coming, they would sort of say, okay, how high? So I think there was sort of a ringleader in that. Yes. Yeah.
Well, everyone is grateful, I feel like, for the initiators of a friend group. And I think for a smaller friend group to have two people partnered in that is really cool.
Yeah.
Be able to have like camaraderie in it and kind of lean on each other. And
yes, 100%. It does. She is terrible at the grocery store. So that's one of the things that we've learned along the way is that when she goes to the grocery store for a weekend, for the 7 of us, she's going to buy 6 jars of jam. And so it's my job to say, we don't need 6 jars of jam, sweetie bug. But anyways, yes, that made me happy.
I've never heard the phrase terrible at the grocery store. And I was wondering, what does that mean? And then you illustrated that. I have a friend just like that. And I have a group of guys we travel with, and we're like, I'm not going to name him, don't let so-and-so go. Don't let him go. So we'll have to like say, hey, why don't you do this here at the house? We'll go. Like, we can't, out him for his foible. Like, hey, I think you're better like on this, you're so good at that.
What does he do when he's at the store? That's probably
just buys everything. Right. And the volume is nuts. Yeah. And all these things that we need that never get open. It's just like, I don't know.
A full jar of mustard for a weekend? Yeah. Oh, but it's very dear. I mean, it comes from a very, I want to take care of people place. And so it's a little bit hard to argue with, but yeah.
There's a good intention behind it, a good heart behind it. Well, I'm so intrigued to go into this Fulbright opportunity. How did that come about, and tell us about what that experience was like?
So as I was coming to the end of college, I knew that I needed to travel. I had studied abroad twice during college, and I loved it.
Where'd you go?
I was in Mexico. So we had trimesters at Carleton. And so I went to Mexico for 1 semester and studied Mexican culture and language. And then I went to Australia and New Zealand for another semester and studied art. But really enjoyed both of those opportunities to really get out there. And so wanted to travel. And so considered the Peace Corps. I had a long conversation with the woman about going into the Peace Corps. And I think the recruiter and I both realized that I didn't really want to go into the Peace Corps. And so then I started looking around at other opportunities, and the Fulbright grant was open. And one of the things about applying for a Fulbright grant is it's really important to know someone who is linked to the country that you're applying to, so that you apply for something that isn't sort of generic, but sort of specific to that country. And so I had a high school Spanish teacher who was Ecuadorian, and he had a colleague. I was talking to him over Christmas break one time, and he had a colleague who was in Ecuador teaching women's studies. And so I wrote her and I said, Carolina, what are the things that I should be looking at? What should I be writing about? What are some of the top topics? And she sent me a couple, but one of them was the fact that women had been leaving their homes and their communities to go and work on rose plantations because rose plantations were popping up everywhere in Ecuador. They had been in Colombia, but Colombia was getting a little unsafe at the time, so they were moving to Ecuador. And their men were not around. The men had traveled out of the region to work in other places. And so there were all these jobs, and the women were there. And the plantation started hiring women and found that they were great workers. And so I proposed that to the Fulbright folks, and they said, that's a very unique topic for Ecuador. Please come do that. And so the U.S. government paid me to go to Ecuador for a year and talk to a bunch of women who worked on rose plantations.
You're visualizing the Serengeti sunset. You are not visualizing the 3-hour hold time to change your flight connection in Cape Town. Did you know Loyal does that too? From fixing the faucet to planning your family's African safari, we handle the logistics so you can handle the adventure.
Wow!
Loyal Home Concierge, your passport to peace of mind.
Talk about unique opportunity and tell folks that may be unfamiliar what the Fulbright program is.
It was a program that was started decades ago, the goal of which was to get Americans out to see and participate in other countries. It's a diplomacy program. I think that all of us know that when you experience something, it loses its otherness and it becomes more comfortable and more. And so the U.S. government at the time wanted Americans to have more experience with the rest of the world. For the year, I was paid something astounding like $12,000 total, nothing, to live in Ecuador. I got an apartment with another Fulbright student, and the program has you do a research project. And so my research project was to talk to women working on the rose plantations. Other people were there. They spent a year getting their master's. One of my colleagues was doing a science project for their Fulbright year. But I got to go out to this beautiful country and go onto plantations and interview women and talk to them about their experiences since they had started working on the plantations.
Wow. What did you see through those conversations?
As a young feminist, I was like, oh, the plantations are exploiting these women. But what I came to learn was that while there were some real health issues for many of the women, headaches, problems with their reproductive systems, all sorts of issues that happened health-wise because of the chemicals that they were using. When you talk to women about their experience, overall, they loved it. Overall, they loved the fact that they were making money, that they could pay for their kids to go to school, for their books and for their fees and all those sort of things, that they had social interactions. So many of them had been isolated in either tiny villages or in their homes or in marriages where they didn't have greater social interaction. And so many of the women really, really loved being out and having these experiences of having new friends and talking to other women every single day and also being able to financially take care of their families. So it was pretty eye-opening in a lot of ways. Now, it was not idyllic. As I mentioned, there were all sorts of problems for the women. And so I think that it came out even on the whole for them. But I loved that it was bringing something to their lives that they appreciated.
Through these podcast conversations, we've been unpacking what are the components to powerful community that gets forged quickly. And it's people in a similar life experience coming together. So finding commonality, people doing something hard together or facing adversity together. Some of the components that really connect people very quickly. I'm hearing those, illustrated in these women working together.
Yeah, 100%.
So this Fulbright year, I'm curious, what the day-to-day, how did that take shape? You're having conversations with these women. Are you kind of there 8 hours a day, moving around the field? Hey, tell me about,
At first, I was going to speak to plantation owners because I had to get permission, right? And so the Fulbright office in Ecuador helped me make a couple of connections with plantation owners. But if you're a plantation owner, you don't know what these women are going to say. And why are you going to let this little naive white American girl come talk to your employees? So it took a minute to be able to get the access and do the conversations. And so then what would happen is I would travel to the plantations for the day, and I would spend 6 hours. They would give me a room, and I would talk to worker after worker, which was extremely generous that they let the worker take off to come talk to me and then go back to the field. And I did that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then at some point I realized, and I will admit that this was very naive, But at some point, I realized that I wanted to have the experience of working on the plantation. And was it really the experience of working on the plantation? We'll get to that in a second. But so in any case, so I talked to a plantation and they said, yeah, why don't you come work on the plantation for a month or two? I moved in with a family in a little village called Cayambe. And every day I hitchhiked out to the plantation. I did each of the jobs on the plantation. So I weeded the rose plants. I cut the rose plants. I bundled the rose plants. I still have scars from all the thorns. And I got to talk to more women and see their interactions and see what they were benefiting from and what was hurting them and eat the lunch that they ate every day and really got a sense of the experience. Now, I wasn't doing it for my livelihood and I wasn't doing it for years on end. So in a lot of ways, it was contrived and maybe even demeaning that I chose to do that. And I honestly looking back on a lot of things that happened and the ways that I was giving back and learning over my years is sort of painful to think about. At the time, I learned a great deal.
Mm. Well, I think like the way I heard that is an expression of empathy, of wanting to understand their experience. So I hear that as genuine versus a contrived, controlled.
It was certainly genuine on my part. Absolutely. I put myself to go to that empathy place. You put yourself in the position of a plantation worker, someone who is there because they need to eat, because their kids need to eat. And then all of a sudden, this girl from the United States comes along and she's like play acting, you know? So, and it was empathy, but if I take that empathy to the next level, I do question a little bit whether what I did was fair or not. And more to the point, how the people working on the plantation felt about me being there. That's all.
Well, I love that inquiry because that's true empathy of going past maybe our initial intention and really wondering, how am I being received? How does this thing I'm saying or doing impact the people around me? And it takes, close paying attention and getting outside of our own paradigm to really tap into that.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was, years later, when I was working in Washington, D.C., I worked for the National Democratic Institute, and I went to other countries, and I worked with women who were running for political office. And I had this amazing opportunity to go to Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa, and work with women who were running for local political office. I mean, really, truly a dream came true. And so I had never run for office. I was 30 years old. I'm this color. And I went to Sierra Leone and I not only wrote the manual, but then we traveled from village to village and I trained local women who were older than me and more experienced than me how to run for office. And I look back on that and I just kind of cringe now. And I remember one instance where I had a whole chapter about how you raise money for your political campaign, because that's what we do in the United States. You raise money for your political campaign. And I'm doing this training. I'm like, here's how you ask people for money and you practice and you have your pitch. And this woman looked at me. She was like, we don't ask people for money. We actually have to pay people to vote for us. And I was like, I'm so sorry. So I think that with, 51 years behind me, I look back on these things and I recognize fully that my heart was absolutely in the right place. My intent was there, but what was the actual result of my actions?
Well, I'm hearing in your post-college journey just some formative moments and seasons and unique opportunities that shaped the heart you have for the community you're in. What are some others that you would call out of opportunities post-college and what a unique jumping off point of that, working in the Rose Farm? I mean, I'd be thinking, where do I go after this? Like, what a, wild opportunity.
I did then take the opportunity to try teaching, and I taught Spanish to middle schoolers, and I really enjoyed that. But it was a year where I realized that I was probably not meant to be a teacher forever. So great, got that under my belt, and then realized that the policy piece, the piece of trying to make change through government, through policy, through electeds, through politics was really sort of where my heart was leading me. And so that's when I went to the LBJ school and got my master's in public affairs. And that was another one of the reasons that I went to the LBJ school was because I knew that building community there would be community that I would take with me into my work. And so I had great friends. I was the social coordinator for LBJ school, and met my husband, met the group of people that are still sort of my Austin core now. And so that was really important. And it doesn't matter where I am in Austin, I constantly am running across people who either went to the LBJ school or went to the LBJ school with me or have some sort of connection that, and that community piece is very lucky, but it was intentional on my part. So,
I appreciate that awareness of calling and what your vocational desire was leading you to the LBJ school, and then probably really powerful shaping and honing. Where did you go after that? Where did that send you?
So after the LBJ school, I got into another government program called the Presidential Management Fellows. And so I went to go work for the federal government. I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency. And I did a lot of work in other countries. I worked, first of all, on indigenous communities here in the U.S. And then from there, worked on environmental issues in the former Soviet Union. And so I traveled to Armenia and Azerbaijan and Moldova and Ukraine and Georgia.
And so you had met your husband at the LBJ school. Is he traveling with you?
So what's interesting is that we both graduated from the LBJ school. I went to San Francisco for a year while he went to Brazil because he got a second degree. And then we met back in Washington, D.C. And he was also working for the federal government, but he was also working for the Environmental Protection Agency. So we both had sort of these odd travel schedules. And at some point, I'm still at the Environmental Protection Agency. He goes to the Department of State. And then I go to a nonprofit. We're both traveling all the time. Somewhere in there. And so he'll go to Bali and I'll be like, oh, I'll go to Bali with you. Or I'm going to London. And he's like, well, why don't you just meet me in Paris? And so we had that kind of travel relationship for a while, which was, of course, glorious. Lots of miles, lots of per diem. Great, wonderful. But at some point along the way, my daughter was born and I was traveling and she was, 6 months old and we did not have family in Washington, D.C. And there was a day where I was traveling home from Jordan and my husband was traveling to India. And we had this 36-hour period where there was no one to be with the baby, Molly. And so we cobbled together our friends, right? Well, of course, Molly got sick. And so one of my friends had to leave work early. Another friend had to come spend the night with her. She cried all night long. That was the point at which I was like, we're not doing this anymore. We need to be near family. Because even though we had that really beautiful friend community that could step in Washington, D.C., going back to the grandparents thing, there's no comparison. So that's when we moved home to Austin so that we could be near the grandparents and they could help us with this baby Molly.
Well, shout out to that D.C. community because stepping up like that,
right?
You don't see that.
I mean,
and that's incredible.
They were great. And we were all older parents, and so not all of them have kids yet, so they could step in, but still, yeah.
So you and your husband both, crazy international experience, exposure to cultures, and then you're coming back to Middle America. What did life look like then, and how are you rebuilding and planning new roots here in Austin?
My parents lived in Austin and my in-laws lived in Houston. And so Austin was a very natural place for us to come back. And we both found jobs. I started working as the publisher of a magazine called The Texas Observer. And he started working for the Environmental Defense Fund. He still traveled a fair bit. He was doing studies on methane emissions all over the world. And so he still did quite a bit of traveling while my kids were little. I didn't. I was based here in Austin. And so But I had these grandparents, right? And so the grandparents would come over and help. My mom would literally stay the night and help me get kids out the door in the morning. I mean, it was huge. Um, but because I was no longer traveling for work, and because we had these two children, there was a minute where the travel dropped a little bit. We might go to Mexico, we might go to Quebec, we might do easier things. There was a minute where we really kind of laid off. And then we started back up. We have friends here. We have 3 families. All of us have 2 kids. The girls are all around 15 or 16 now, and the boys are all around 12, 13. And from the time that the boys were 2 and the girls were 4 and 5, we started traveling together. And so at first it was easy. It was like Tulum, Tulum, Tulum. And then we went to Costa Rica. And so with one of the families, we have a trip every single year now. Last year was Brazil. Last year was Japan. The year before that was Brazil. This year is Colombia. Next year is South Africa. We've been to Spain. We've been to Costa Rica.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
You got a new nest with the kids in it now.
A new nest with the kids in it. That's exactly right. I seem to like my nests.
I'm hearing that.
I like my travel, and I like my nests.
You're in Aspen, or maybe Italy, and your phone pings with a freeze warning back in Austin. Panic? Nope. You have Loyal. We're already there, wrapping the pipes and checking the perimeter. Whether you're home or away, we are the eyes and ears of your estate. Global freedom, local support.
So the kids gotten the travel bug as well?
They have. When they were in 5th and 7th grade, we moved to Spain for the year. We wanted them to learn Spanish, and so we moved to southern Spain. And while we were in Spain, we knew we were going to only be there for a year. They were in Spanish public school. I took a break from work, and my husband worked remotely. And we traveled everywhere. So while we were in Spain, we went to like 18 different countries. Every month we took one international trip and one domestic Spanish trip. And we just blew it out. And so they are not only great travelers, but they appreciate it, and they are very grateful for it.
Man, what a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
So you've had this calling and really a heart for caring for the people around you, a mission to serve women and girls, and this showed up in vibrant ways in many different countries around the world, and also in headquarters capacities in DC. How did that take shape here in Austin?
So when I came back to Austin, the Texas Observer job was a great introduction. I had my son while I was working at the Texas Observer. Great, fine. But a job opening came up at Annie's List, which is an organization that gets women elected to office here in Texas. Well, that's my heart right there, getting women elected to office. I have often said that Texas women should probably just go ahead and run the world. Feisty, smart, fierce, beautiful, go do it, right? So I got to work at Annie's List, and that was getting Texas women elected to office. Loved it. Wonderful. From there, I went to go work for Michelle Obama's Let Girls Learn program. And so that was getting girls in other countries a secondary education. And I got to make sure that program had everything it needed to succeed. And then when the Obamas were no longer in the presidency, and that program shut down, I again shifted to another women's serving organization. It actually serves everyone, but it was the Safe Alliance. And the Safe Alliance is an organization that works to stop the cycle of violence. And again, that could be violence against boys, girls, trans people, whatever. But so much of the cycle of violence impacts women. And so that was another women's serving organization.
Over time working for these different cause-oriented and mission-oriented organizations, what were relationships like? I imagine you were meeting like-minded people. Like, what was that training like?
in the political space, you mentioned forging bonds really quickly. I think in the political space, when you're working on a campaign, those are bonds that happen very quickly. They're not always the healthiest bonds. I think there's lots of drinking in politics.
Seen that in the movies, yeah.
But you are, you're pulling all-nighters all the time. And you're all there because you're passionate and you're driven. And so working in politics and getting women elected to politics was really gorgeous for me because it was what my heart really told me to do. I will tell you, though, that the political world, and then I later ran for office. I later ran for school board here in Austin. But the political world was also really hard for me because it never felt like I couldn't create a nest. There was so much movement. People were coming in, going out. There were a lot of personal priorities and interests that didn't necessarily lend to the whole. And so creating that nest in politics was a lot harder. And I think that made me walk away from it.
Mm.
Let Girls Learn was an awesome opportunity. It was not long enough. But the working in the space of stopping violence was pretty remarkable. I think that one of the things that I learned there is that you do form really strong bonds with the people that you're working with because you're seeing and hearing such terrible things that it is impossible not to get through your day. I mean, it's impossible to get through your day without talking to someone about what you just heard or seen. And so I had a really incredible team at the Safe Alliance that was my heart. And I'm very grateful because they're sort of what got me through that experience because it's hard. It's hard to hear those stories. You're surrounded by people, both clients and staff, that have experienced violence. They're working there oftentimes because they've had an experience. And so it's just a lot every day.
Man, we're grateful for people like you standing in the gap for people experiencing those types of hardships and brokenness.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the people that are still there and doing that work on an ongoing basis. Very impressive.
And take us to where you are now.
So after that year in Spain, we came home and I knew that I wanted to continue giving back, but I also knew that I thought I was ready for a leadership role. And so I decided to look for a job as an executive director in a community organization. And I had worked with I Live Here, I Give Here because they put on Amplify Austin Day. And so I knew about Amplify Austin Day and I knew about I Live Here, I Give Here. And I got the job as the ED and I got that 2.5 years ago. And I think that and so I Live Here, I Give Here is a local nonprofit, and we are working to get everyone in Central Texas to give back to our community. And one of the big ways that we do that is every year we put on Amplify Austin Day. And Amplify Austin Day is a big giving day in early March, and we raise about $10 million for about 700 nonprofits.
Wow. And can any nonprofit geographically focused participate in that?
Yeah, 7 counties in Central Texas, as long as you have your 501c3 and you are, we love any nonprofit. Come on down. Yeah.
Right on. I love the mission of that. It really helps people have skin in the game with the place that they live. And I think that's when the best, most vibrant, healthy community gets formed is when people are really invested in it.
I agree with you. I think one of the things I love about our organization is that there are so many people that move to Austin and don't know where to start. And I feel like our organization, Amplify Austin Day, what we do is such a perfect way for people to, if you go to amplifyatx.org, right? We have a list of 700 nonprofits. They're divided by what county they're in, by what issue they address. So if they're serving pets, if they're serving kids, whatever it is. And then you can just go through and look for the organizations that mean something to you. We're also training people how to be board members. We're also talking to people about how to give back in the most effective ways. We're also talking to people about volunteering. All of that, because I agree with you. I think that not only is it good for people when they give back, you give back, it makes you feel better, right?
Totally.
But also, I think it's imperative for the community. Remind me, where do you volunteer?
Mobile Loaves and Fishes.
Mobile Loaves and Fishes.
Right
So
down-
you and Alan got to talk about that.
We did.
Oh,
yeah. And then Cornerstone Restoration, helping people with functional needs for their homes.
Oh, wow. We get those calls sometimes. Is that things like, my husband's out on a wheelchair, we need a ramp?
Exactly. And usually they don't have the means to pay for it. And a lot of times it's, heat issues in the winter or AC in the summer, really functional needs. And what I love about, we've done some plumbing.
Yeah.
What I love about that organization too is they fix the functional home needs, but also enter into relationship with the people they're serving and stick with them. A lot of the people that the organization supports are kind of socially isolated. And so just having people come around them and invite them into community and really stick with them for the long haul is really powerful.
And Cornerstone is, you're volunteering with Cornerstone?
Yep.
Okay. So they're finding people to go in and do the physical work. Are you also the ones continuing that relationship with the client, or do they continue the relationship with the client in other ways too, or both?
So myself and my company will volunteer as well. We're in the home management space, and so we're regularly, working on people's houses around Austin. So we're the labor or the free labor with the jobs.
Nice.
And then there's another team that's focused on the relational component.
Okay.
And really forging friendships with these folks and sticking with them. So we're the grunt labor. Swinging hammers and turning wrenches.
Great. Remember, I'm really good at roofing if you need it.
Ooh, yes. Thank you for helping me with that connection.
My dad drives for Meals on Wheels. And the thing that he's 82. Should he be driving? It's a different question. But I think the thing that he loves most is those connections. I think he sees his job much more as the relationship job than the I'm taking a food job. So I
think that's the right perspective to have. And when you have that perspective, the people receiving your expressions of service, it's more connective. Because I think it's hard to be in a position of, I'm being helped. And
nobody wants that.
Because, we don't like to admit that. But if someone is emphasizing the relational connection, it just feels more life-giving.
And more genuine. Because he's not showing up, on Christmas Day. He took my son over to one of his clients who was alone that day. Her son was out of town and couldn't come see her. And so they went to go visit, and it didn't feel contrived. It felt real. He was worried about this person. She was happy to see him. They had a real conversation. Like, that's really neat. So I think that relationship piece is just key. Everything mostly too.
So as we start to wind down our conversation today, I'd love for you to leave me and folks with what are some family rhythms or individual rhythms that are really life-giving for you right now in Austin?
What a great question. 2 small things. One is my kids get an allowance every month. They get $20 that they can spend on whatever, generally on really dumb things. They get $20 that they put into savings, and then they get $20 that goes to a charitable cause. And so at the end of the year, they have $250 that they give to a charitable cause. And so we just got to have the conversations about where that money was going. And my daughter chose Planned Parenthood, and my son chose Helen Keller International. I can't explain that one. It seems like a great organization. I don't know how he found it, but great. You did the research. Congratulations. So that was one thing that recently, and then we have a donor advised fund, which I think everyone should have because it doesn't take very much money to open. You get the tax benefit, and then you have this money that you spend that you give away. It's specifically for charitable giving. And so I am not a millionaire, but I have this chunk of money. And so at the end of the year, we were talking about where we'd give some money. And so I put. So then we got to decide, and we gave some money to Out Youth, which is incredible, and we gave some money to Vivint, and we did these things. But so that was an email that I got to send yesterday, where I got to say, okay, these are the things that are important to us. These are the things that are important to my son, to my daughter. Let's make sure that our money is doing some good out there. Less altruistically, because we didn't travel for the holidays, we decided to try a new restaurant every day for about 5-day stretch.
Solid.
It was so fun. And everybody picked a different day and picked where they were going, and it was awesome. The rotisserie place in Fairground was phenomenal.
Oh, I don't know it.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
I think it's called, oh God, I think it's called Austin Rotisserie.
Huh.
I don't think it has a very unique name.
Was that your favorite of the 5?
No. My daughter took us to Wow Poke, which was phenomenal. But my husband took us to Luby's. But it was a definite cultural experience. Do you know what Luby's is?
I don't know if I've been.
Okay, I need to know if you have these where you grew up. They're cafeterias.
Oh.
Imagine your elementary school, not your high school, your elementary school cafeteria. That's what Luby's.
So like plastic tray, walking through, people serving?
People who don't really understand what you're saying, and so maybe you ask a question, then maybe get something weird on your plate. The case is not great. I don't know, maybe, but Livy's was interesting. But my favorite was it was a dip place, you know, where you have the meat and you dip it into the broth.
Oh, hot pot?
Hot pot. It was called Old Alley. And
Oh my gosh.
do you know this place?
I just wrote that down the other day. It's on my list.
It's so good.
Wow.
It was so good. And we had been to the Dip Tatsuya. I don't know if you've ever been there on Barnum Road.
That one.
It was really fun, right? But it was so expensive. Old Alley was like a third of the price, and it was better. Sorry, Tatsuya.
Okay. Hot tip. No pun intended.
So great. It was really fun. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
Wow. I love that. Well, I am going to make it over there now that it's been double reinforced.
Race. Yeah. So yeah, I think that those are my 2 small things. I think my big tip is, it's not actually a tip. 2026 is just a real big unknown. Whether this is being aired on January 6th or March 6th or whatever, it's going to be an interesting year. And I would really love it if in this year people realize what you and I have come to, that giving back, that being in community with people, is really the only way that we're gonna thrive this year. And I hope against hope that is something that more and more people come to this year. And I'm grateful for opportunities like this, because I think it's key.
Well, let it be. And thank you for sharing that encouragement. And thank you for illustrating that mission really your entire life. I love the example you set for that encouragement.
Thank you.
Pyra, thank you so much for spending time with us in the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. I also really enjoyed it, and I'm really grateful to you for doing this show. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Austin Community Capital. This show is a celebration of the spirit of Austin, Texas, honoring our past, engaging our present, and building our future together. If this conversation sparked something in you, a new idea, a feeling of connection, or just a good laugh, pass it on. Share this episode with a fellow Austinite or a loved one who needs to hear it. Let's keep weaving this fabric of community together. This show is proudly presented by Loyal Home Concierge. At Loyal, we believe that a healthy, thriving city starts within the 4 walls of your home. We are passionate about supporting overextended executives, the moms and dads who do it all, and the couples who take life by storm. Because we know that when your home life is supported, you are free to support the ones who matter most.
Your kids, your wife.
Whether you need a proactive manager for your home or a creative problem solver for your next big adventure, we are here to help you design a life of intention. LoyalHomeConcierge.com. Let's make life a little more beautiful together. Stay loyal to your community, and we'll see you next time.